Okay, you guys did really good. I mean, it's tough against sort of a lab setting live, but I think we had a good discussion. So I'm going to ask the two pitchers, and Chris and Brett, to come up. And what they're going to do is they're going to share a personal experience on either the delivery or the receiving side of pitches. And you're probably going to hear some themes that we've already been discussing. So maybe I'll ask Chris to start.
I recall when we first went out to pitch our idea, first thing I think we learned is that investors like good ideas, but they like good ideas with the management team attached to it. So very important. We have a great idea, but so you need to come in well prepared with a good team. I just want to make that point because Brett talked about making sure you round out your team. And when they ask you who's going to head up human resources, you say, well, Bob, he's a software engineer, but he can do it. That's not going to be very impressive. But so you want to go in knowing what you're talking about because it'll be very apparent that you don't. So we went out, we approached initially 3 investors. The first one knew us well from our careers and offered us all the money we ever needed. It was absolutely, they knew we had a proven track record. They knew we could deliver. We knew what we were talking about. But the deal they proposed for us around that money was not that good of a deal for us as individuals. So then we do a second one who was more, someone suggested rather than go one of these big guys, go down to a mezzanine level or a lower level investor because they're more flexible. And they latched right on to what we were doing, understood exactly what our business proposal was and exactly who we were. So then we went to a medium-sized firm here in the Boston area, who we will remain nameless right now, but who eventually folded, by the way. But anyway, so we were smooth, sailing along during the presentation because we really did know what we were talking about. And a simple question came up, and the question was, do the physicians get paid before, as in their role as medical directors, do they get paid before the P&L and the income level or after? Pretty simple question as I think about it now. And we were absolutely floored. We didn't know whether because they were partners, we didn't know. We looked at each other and it was almost like we got hit with a stun gun. And we couldn't answer the question. It was a very simple question that we couldn't answer. And we kind of babbled our way through it. And I'll tell you, we never heard from those guys. And they were really good. They were right into what we were doing. On that one question that seemed so simple, we weren't prepared for it. So my message here is be prepared for anything that's going to come your way.
Okay. Technology. So the first thing, this is a great example for this. Going to presentations, technology doesn't work. It happens all the time. That wasn't staged, by the way. I remember, there's a comment earlier, do you bring a demo with you? Always, always, always. Bring a demo. If you could show something, whether it's a prototype, whatever it may be, maybe not the plane, that may not fit, but maybe a video of it. But the idea, it's really important because a lot of folks, they see so many, investors see so many slide presentations, and it's hard to tell what is real and what is not real. So I bring a demo. And demos, probably 99.9% of the time, they fail. You have some problem, there's a challenge. So be comfortable, be able to talk through it, prepare, that at each point in the demo, something may go wrong, and have a backup strategy. So what is your backup? So if you're bringing a presentation and it's on a laptop or a tablet, have it back up on a USB drive. Have actually paper, some slides, some folks like that. But be prepared to go out of sequence. In the presentation I gave today, I went from front to back without questions. However, in an investor situation, you may say something that resonates with them, and they want to dig in right there. And you really want to address it at that point. So be able to know your presentation inside and out, and walk away. First of all, walk into the meeting knowing what you want to get across. What are the real salient points? And make sure that you address those. That's probably the key thing that differentiates The long presentation has a lot of ideas. They may be very new to these investors, but what are the top 3, 4, 5 things? And just write it down. Just make sure that comes across.
I'm part of a group called Boston Harbor Angels, and it's about 35 individuals that get together on a monthly basis. We have a number of folks come in, usually numbering between 6 to 8, make presentations for the individuals to make an individual decision whether they want to invest or not. Obviously we have 35 very large type A egos all in one room that all have to ask questions at once. But the question I always come to whenever I'm interested in a particular opportunity, and most of them have been asked up to the point where, what's the market size and return and all that good stuff. You go through everything. It follows the path of the SWOT analysis as we talked about. The question I ask is, what are you worried about? What's going to stop you? What are you worried about? And what's your number one concern? If I have an entrepreneur that can't answer that question, I get real concerned. Because they're really buying into the projections and everything put together, and they're not looking at this and questioning whether they're looking at this from a real cold, hard, realistic basis. If they don't have 1 or 2 problems or issues or concerns that they're worried about, I don't know. I really start asking some questions. So think that through if you ever get to the point. You should always know that, but think that through if you ever get into a presentation. Someone's going to throw you that curveball.
So the corollary is, even if you've got it well in hand, you have to have a couple of problems that you can share.
Absolutely.
So my experience was going up to an unnamed VC in San Francisco, pitching my second company. I get in front of this guy, and after the cordial discussion took place, I get to my first slide, he starts asking questions. I never got past the first slide. I kept trying to get to the second slide and move through my presentation, and he would not stop asking questions. He had to have the sequence of information the way his questions showed up. That's just the way it worked. And I realized at that moment that these comments about know your presentation cold, forwards, backwards, inside and out, really is true, because I was flat-footed. I was expecting to go through a nice sequence of slides that were all thought out and logical, and he just flipped it over and started asking questions. I never got to slide 2. Total failure.
I actually had a very similar conversation with 2 VCs. They sat me in a room. I thought we were going along great. We got to the second slide, and one fellow just took the presentation and threw it over and just said, let's just talk. Okay? And of course, in my mind, I was ready to go through the 28 slides that I had, or the 16, or whatever it may be. But at that point, what they really were doing, obviously, was testing my intimate knowledge of the market, what I believed in, and so forth. So you really do need to be prepared. That could happen very easily.
Okay, so, John, I'm opening it up for questions now to the panelists.
I think it was either Carl or Chris or mentioned how important it is to get a partner. None of you mentioned anything about the selection of a partner. I think picking a partner is probably a more dangerous selection than picking a wife or a husband. and divorces can happen very quickly with the wrong partner.
Evelyn's nodding her head.
Well, I picked Evelyn as my partner.
Go ahead.
Can I take that? Don't laugh. I spent 9 months vetting the founder of this company, because the first company I did, I partnered with a sociopath. I don't want to do that. The second company I partnered with one of my good buddies out of the first company, very talented designer. And the deal was, well, we're both going to contribute equally, time and effort and money. And we pegged a number on the money, and of course, we can both do that, right? Oh, yes. He couldn't write a single check. He couldn't put the time in because he had other clients. But he wanted half. Big problem.
So, jumping off of that, how would you protect yourself, or would you put certain protective paperwork in place for finding a partner?
Can address that. Really, what you want to do is once you get that partner you decide you want to go forward with, really work with your attorney, whoever helps you incorporate, and put a partnership agreement that actually describes the scenarios of what happens if it doesn't go well. And it seems hard to do because when you start off the project, it's almost like a prenup agreement, okay? So you're saying, well, don't you love me? You know, why do we have to do this? We're going to be together forever. So you're really in this business, this new venture, plus 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 partners, whatever it may be. You really want to describe and outline what happens when situations that you just heard, or situations that you try to imagine any possible situation and write it down. And get that memorialized in a legal document so that when those situations arise, and they do, it's very clear what the path is to get out of them.
Another question I was going to ask earlier about after you guys do your pitches. So I feel like during the pitch, one thing I feel like everyone gets nervous about is talking about the risk and also talking about the weaknesses. What do you guys do to prepare for those specific aspects, and where do you fit them in your pitch usually as a good method for making sure they sound best as they can?
Depending upon the risk and depending upon the weakness, I may put it in the pitch, or I may not. If it's abundantly clear and it's a reason that we're securing additional funding, then you do it. If it's something that perhaps doesn't need to be just moved, let's say, on a piece of paper to show them that I think it's going to degrade value and raise additional concerns, then maybe you just kind of see where you go with the process. What I will tell you, though, sooner or later, before you finally sign, the line on the dotted line, and you all become friends for life, you really do need to disclose this. Because at the end of the day, when you really think about it, if you're choosing the right financial partner along the way, they're there to help you out. They really are your partner. And so it's best that they understand some of the challenges that you have moving into this. And as I said, there is a bit of an art as to when to disclose it, but ultimately you do.
So I like to hit the risks head on because in the medical device industry, they're pretty well known. You need to have a strategy to mitigate the risks. So you got, now there are second order risks that I agree with Hank that you may or may not disclose in the initial meeting. Once you've set the hook, then it's time to let some of that out.
I live more in the tech world, you just lie.
The question I'd like to ask about is when someone interrupts behaviorally by asking questions throughout that discombobulates people, I think the strategies are to state your objectives at the beginning of the session and not to deviate. I mean, that's what we teach in education, that you start out with behavioral objectives. You don't know everything in the world there is to know about whatever phenomenon it is, and then you just say, I don't know about that particular answer, and then you move on because I am intending to present.
Well, all of the questions that gentleman was asking were answered in the deck. If he could have just stopped asking questions, I would have gotten to it. But he was a customer. And so if I wanted a chance of landing that fish in the boat, I had to go down the path that he wanted to go down. I didn't feel that there was a way for me to corral him. I tried to get him back on. Like, that question's going to be answered in 2 or 3 slides. No, he wanted it right now. And then the next question he wanted right now. So that's just the way he was as an individual.
I'll make a comment on that. I think, you got to remember, they got the money, so they got the floor. But also, it's a style that some people employ to rattle you. I mean, they want. In my example, when we were asked a simple question, I think the way we handled it killed the opportunity to get the money. It was that simple. They just thought, well, they couldn't be that prepared. They can't answer this question. And in retrospect, it was so apparent what the answer was. But we looked like fools. So, but I've been in a lot of presentations where people interrupt you just for that reason. See how you handle it. And, depends on how much money you want. You deal with it.
Don't you think that they're looking to press some of the common hot buttons that entrepreneurs will react to find out the level of maturity you're dealing with?
Yeah. And I think the other thing is they watch how you interact with your team and your partners when you come into those difficult situations. So I believe in courtesy, but as I said, they get the money and you want it. So one other thing I want to bring up about the prop thing earlier, I just want to, at the MIT program, they had a neat project there, and the name of the company was Bright Ice. Is that the name of it, Joe? And these guys, it's MIT students, so what they were going to do on like a hockey rink, they had a thing that went under the ice where they would advertise during the game, and it could be apparent, on TV, but not on the ice, or vice versa if you wanted to do that. Great idea, but they talked about how they could never get it across to the investors about how it would work. So they went out, they built a tabletop-sized hockey rink and put the technology in it, showed it to the people, and it went right through that way. So props are very important.
Okay, we have 5 minutes left, so I was going to monopolize the 5 minutes. But first, I wanted to say thank you to speakers, panelists for sharing teaching and running a